I never thought my life would become a cautionary tale on the internet. I always imagined those viral family dramas happen to other people who lived in big houses with white picket fences, or in tiny apartments with too many secrets. But here I am, sitting on the edge of my unmade bed, phone in hand, reading the words my own parents wrote about me for the world to see. It started on a Sunday morning, the kind that smells like burnt toast and stale coffee. I was home from college for the summer, and the air in our house was thick with the kind of tension that makes you want to hold your breath. My mom was already in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, her lips pressed into a thin line. Dad was at the table, pretending to read the newspaper, but I could see his eyes darting over the top of the page, watching me. Are you going to help with the yard today, or are you too busy with your whatever it is you do on that laptop? Mom's voice was sharp, slicing through the silence. I swallowed hard. I have a paper due tomorrow, Mom. I told you last night. She scoffed, not looking up. Of course, always an excuse. Dad folded his paper with a sigh. You know, when we were your age, we didn't have the luxury of just sitting around. We worked. We helped our families. I felt the familiar heat rising in my cheeks. I do help. Not enough, Mom cut in. You're always taking, never giving. We bend over backwards for you, and you can't even mow the lawn without a fight. I wanted to scream. Instead, I grabbed my laptop and retreated to my room, the door clicking shut behind me. I could hear their voices through the thin walls, low and angry, but I tried to drown them out with music. I told myself it would blow over, like it always did. But that afternoon, everything changed. I was scrolling through Instagram, half-heartedly liking photos of people I barely knew when I saw it. A post from my mom's account, public for all her friends and mine to see. A photo of our front yard, the grass overgrown, the weeds wild. The caption read, "Some kids these days have no gratitude. We give them everything, and all we get is attitude and laziness. Maybe we should have raised them differently." #ungrateful #parenting fail. My heart dropped into my stomach. The comments were already piling up, sympathetic moms, distant relatives, even neighbors chiming in with their own stories of lazy kids. I felt exposed, like someone had ripped the roof off our house and invited the world to look inside. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I scrolled through the comments, each one a little dagger. Kids these days have no respect. You're too soft on them. Back in my day, we would never. I closed the app, but the words burned behind my eyes. I could hear my parents laughing in the kitchen, the sound sharp and brittle. I wondered if they were reading the comments, basking in the validation. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but my mind was loud. I thought about all the times I tried to explain how hard college was, how lonely I felt, how much pressure I was under to be perfect. I thought about the times I'd helped without being asked, the times I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace. I thought about the post, and the way it made me feel, small, invisible, like my side of the story didn't matter. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my best friend, Jess. "Are you okay? I saw your mom's post. That's so messed up." I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. I wanted to tell her I was fine, that it didn't bother me, but the truth was, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I spent the day in a fog, avoiding my parents, avoiding my phone. But by evening, the anger had started to simmer beneath the hurt. Why did they get to tell their side of the story, while I had to stay silent? Why did everyone assume they were right, just because they were the parents? I opened my laptop and started to write. At first, it was just for me, a way to get the words out of my head. But as I typed, the idea took root. What if I told my side of the story? What if I posted it just like they had? My hands shook as I wrote, but the words came fast, fueled by months, years, of feeling unheard. My parents think I'm ungrateful. Here's what they don't see. I wrote about the pressure to be perfect, the late nights studying, the anxiety that made it hard to get out of bed some days. I wrote about the chores I did without being asked, the times I tried to talk to them and been shut down. I wrote about how it felt to see my life reduced to a hashtag. I hesitated before hitting post. I knew it would make things worse at home. But I also knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I posted it. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. Some were harsh, strangers telling me to grow up or respect my parents. But others were kind. People shared their own stories, their own pain. Some said they wished they'd had the courage to speak up. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. That night, my mom stormed into my room, phone in hand. "What is this? How dare you embarrass us like that?" I looked her in the eye, my voice steady. "You embarrassed me first." She stared at me, stunned. For a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she turned and left, slamming the door behind her. I sat on my bed, heart pounding, but I didn't regret it. For the first time, I told my truth. And people listened. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside, but inside, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation with my mom over and over. Her face, shocked, hurt, angry, kept flashing in my mind. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if maybe I should have just let it go. But then I remembered the feeling of finally being heard, of strangers reaching out with words of comfort and understanding. That feeling was something I hadn't known I was missing until I had it. I checked my phone. Overnight, my post had exploded. Hundreds of comments, dozens of private messages. Some people shared their own stories of family conflict, of parents who didn't listen, of feeling invisible. Others offered advice, or just a simple, "I see you." I scrolled through them, my chest tight with a mix of gratitude and guilt. Downstairs, I could hear my parents talking in hushed voices. Every so often, my name would float up the stairs, sharp and accusing. I knew I'd have to face them eventually, but for now, I just needed a minute to breathe. Jess texted me again, "You okay? Want to get out of the house for a bit?" I didn't even hesitate. Just, "Please." We met at the park, the one we used to go to in middle school when life felt overwhelming. Jess brought iced coffee and a bag of chips, and we sat on the swings, letting the world spin around us. "So, how bad is it?" she asked, her voice gentle. I shrugged, picking at the label on my coffee cup. "Pretty bad. Mom's furious. Dad hasn't said anything yet, but I can tell he's pissed." Jess nodded. "I read your post. It was really brave. I don't think I could have done it." I looked at her, surprised. "You're the bravest person I know." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's different when it's your family. You always think you can handle it until you can't." We sat in silence for a while, watching a little kid chase after a soccer ball, his parents cheering from the sidelines. I wondered if they'd ever have a moment like mine, if every family was just one argument away from falling apart. When I got home, Dad was waiting for me in the living room. He didn't say anything at first, just gestured for me to sit. I perched on the edge of the couch, my hands clenched in my lap. He cleared his throat. "Your mother and I, we read what you wrote." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "We didn't realize you felt that way. Why didn't you tell us?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Tried. You never listened. You always just shut me down." He winced, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. "We were just trying to do what's best for you. It's hard being a parent. You don't get a manual." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the fear behind his anger. The fear of losing control, of not being enough. It was the same fear I felt just from the other side. "I know," I said quietly, "but I'm not a kid anymore. I need you to see me. Not just as your child, but as a person." He nodded slowly, rubbing his hands together. "We'll try. I can't promise we'll get it right, but we'll try." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was more than I'd expected. That night, Mom didn't speak to me. She moved around the house like a ghost, her eyes red and swollen. I wanted to reach out, to tell her I didn't hate her, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I went back online. My post had been shared hundreds of times. People were tagging their friends, their siblings, even their parents. Some of the comments were harsh, People accusing me of being selfish, of airing dirty laundry in public. But most were kind. One message stood out. "Thank you for saying what I never could. You're not alone." I replied, "Neither are you." For the first time in a long time, I felt a little less alone. The next day, Mom finally broke her silence. She cornered me in the hallway, her arms crossed over her chest. "I don't like what you did," she said, her voice trembling. "But I suppose I started it." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I just wanted you to hear me." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I hear you. I don't understand you, but I hear you." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. That evening, I posted an update. I thanked everyone for their support, for sharing their stories, for reminding me that family isn't just about blood, it's about listening, about trying, about forgiving. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe things will get better. Maybe they won't. But I know now that my voice matters, even if it shakes. The days that followed felt like walking through a minefield. Every conversation with my parents was careful, measured, as if we were all afraid of setting off another explosion. Mom still moved around me with a kind of wounded dignity, her lips pressed tight, her eyes avoiding mine. Dad tried to act normal, but I could see the strain in his forced small talk and the way he lingered in doorways, as if he wanted to say more but didn't know how. I spent a lot of time in my room, headphones on, pretending to study. But my mind kept drifting back to the post, to the flood of messages and stories from strangers who felt just like me. I started replying to some of them, and soon I was having long, late-night conversations with people from all over the country. Some were my age, struggling with parents who didn't understand them. Others were older, looking back on their own families with regret or longing. It was strange, but comforting, to know that my pain wasn't unique. One night, as I was scrolling through my messages, I got one from a woman named Linda. She wrote, "I'm a mom, and your story broke my heart. I never want my kids to feel the way you do. Thank you for opening my eyes." I stared at her words for a long time, feeling something shift inside me. Maybe, I thought, telling the truth really could change things. But at home, the tension was still there, simmering just below the surface. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Mom finally spoke. "Your aunt called me today," she said, not looking up from the silverware. "She saw your post. She wanted to know if everything was okay." I hesitated, unsure if this was a trap. "What did you tell her?" She sighed, placing the last fork down with a little too much force. "I told her we were working through it. That families fight sometimes." I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. We ate in silence, the clink of cutlery the only sound. After dinner, Dad asked me to help him in the garage. I followed him out, the air thick with the smell of oil and old paint. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "I know things have been rough," he said quietly. "I know we haven't always listened the way we should. But you have to understand, it's hard for us too. We grew up in a different time. Our parents didn't care about our feelings. We just did what we were told." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy he must have been, eager to please, afraid to disappoint. "I get that, Dad. But things are different now. I need you to try. I need you to see me." He nodded, his eyes shining. "I'm trying. I promise." It wasn't everything, but it was something. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about all the things I wanted to say to my parents. I wanted to tell them about the pressure I felt at school, about the nights I lay awake worrying I'd never be good enough. I wanted to tell them about the loneliness, the fear, the hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Instead, I wrote it all down in a letter. I poured out everything, my anger, my sadness, my love. I left it on the kitchen table before I left for my summer job the next morning. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. My letter was gone. I found Mom in the backyard, watering her roses. She didn't say anything, but when I walked past her, she reached out and squeezed my hand. Inside, Dad was watching TV. He looked up when I came in, his face soft. "We read your letter," he said. "Thank you for telling us." I nodded, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "Thank you for listening." We didn't hug or cry, or have some big, dramatic moment. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we were going to be okay. The next day, I got another message from Linda. I talked to my kids tonight, she wrote. I told them I want to hear their side too. Thank you. I smiled, feeling a little lighter. Maybe my story wasn't just about me. Maybe it was about all of us, trying to find our way back to each other. Summer drifted on, heavy and slow, but something in the house had shifted. The air wasn't quite so tense. My parents and I still had our moments, old habits die hard, but there was a new kind of effort, a cautious willingness to try. Sometimes, I'd catch Mom watching me with a look I couldn't quite read, as if she was seeing me for the first time and wasn't sure what to make of it. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find Dad making pancakes. He never cooked, not unless Mom was sick or out of town. He glanced up, spatula in hand, and gave me a sheepish smile. Thought I'd give your mom a break, he said. You want some? I nodded, surprised. We ate together in the quiet kitchen, the only sound the sizzle of batter on the griddle. After a while, he cleared his throat. I read some of the comments on your post, he said, not meeting my eyes. A lot of people out there feel the same way you do. I set my fork down, unsure where this was going. I guess I never realized how much things have changed, he continued. When I was your age, we didn't talk about feelings. We just kept it all inside. Maybe that wasn't the best way. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. It's hard for me too. I don't always know how to say what I'm feeling. But I want to try. He smiled, a little sad, a little proud. Me too, kiddo. Later that day, Mom asked if I wanted to help her in the garden. We worked side by side, pulling weeds and planting new flowers. For a long time, we didn't talk. Then, as she pressed a marigold into the earth, she spoke. I was embarrassed, you know. When you posted that, I felt like everyone was judging me, like I'd failed as a mother. I looked at her, dirt under my nails, sweat on my brow. I didn't want to hurt you. I needed people to know my side. She nodded, her eyes shining. I know. I think I needed to hear it even if it hurt. We finished the garden in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that comes from understanding. That evening, I got a message from a guy named Marcus. He was my age, from a small town in Texas. My parents did the same thing to me, he wrote. I never had the guts to say anything. Reading your story made me feel less alone. I replied, you're not alone. None of us are. The days blurred together, but the house felt lighter. My parents still had their moments, old habits don't vanish overnight, but there was a new sense of respect, a fragile truce. Sometimes we'd sit together after dinner, talking about nothing and everything. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One night as I was getting ready for bed, Mom knocked on my door. She stood in the hallway, her hands twisting nervously. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For the post. For not listening. For making you feel like you didn't matter. I swallowed hard, tears stinging my eyes. I'm sorry too. For hurting you. For not telling you how I felt sooner. She stepped forward and hugged me, tight and fierce. For the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that things could get better. After she left, I sat on my bed, scrolling through the messages from strangers who had become friends. I realized that my story wasn't just about pain or conflict, it was about hope. About the possibility of change, even when it seemed impossible. I thought about Linda, about Marcus, about all the people who had reached out. I thought about my parents, trying in their own imperfect way to understand. And I thought about myself, learning to speak up, to set boundaries, to believe that my voice mattered. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. By the end of July, the story had faded from the front of everyone's minds, everyone except ours. The post was still out there, somewhere in the endless scroll of the internet, but the comments had slowed, the messages trickled down to a few every week. Life, as it always does, moved on. But I was different. I noticed it in small ways. The way I spoke up at work when someone tried to take credit for my idea, the way I told Jess when I needed space instead of just ghosting her, the way I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't immediately flinch from my own reflection. I was learning, slowly, that boundaries weren't walls, They were doors I could open and close as I needed. At home, things were still fragile, but there was a new honesty between us. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the neighbor's roof, Dad turned to me. "You know, I've been thinking about what you said. About needing to be seen. I guess I always thought I was doing right by you, providing for you, keeping you safe. But maybe I missed the part where I was supposed to know you too." I looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "I know you tried, Dad. I know it wasn't easy for you, either." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I want to do better. I want us to do better." Mom joined us, a mug of tea in her hands. She sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "I've been reading some of those stories people shared on your post," she said quietly. "It's made me realize how many families are hurting, just like us. I don't want us to be one of those families that never talks, never forgives." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Me neither." We sat there for a long time, the three of us, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deep blue. For the first time in years, I felt like we were a team, not just three people living under the same roof. A few days later, I got a message from a girl named Priya. She wrote, "I showed your post to my mom. We cried together. She apologized for things I didn't even know she remembered. Thank you for being brave." I wrote back, "Thank you for sharing that with me. I hope things get better for you too." The connections I'd made through my story became a kind of lifeline. Some nights, I'd stay up late, talking to people in different time zones, sharing advice, offering comfort, just listening. It was strange, but I felt closer to these strangers than I did to some of my own relatives. One afternoon, Mom asked if I wanted to help her make dinner. We chopped vegetables side by side, the kitchen filled with the scent of garlic and onions. She told me stories about her own childhood, about her mother's strict rules and her father's silence. I realized, listening to her, that she was still carrying wounds of her own. "I never wanted to be like my parents," she said, her voice soft. "But sometimes I think I am, without even realizing it." I put my hand on hers. "You're not them. You're you. And you're trying. That's what matters." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." That night, as we ate together, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of belonging, of being seen and heard. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But it was enough. As summer drew to a close, I started packing for college again. This time, my parents helped me, folding clothes, making lists, arguing over what I needed to bring. It felt almost normal, almost easy. On the morning I left, Mom hugged me tight. "Call us, okay? Not just when you need something. Just to talk." "I will," I promised. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "We're proud of you, kiddo. Don't forget that." I smiled, my throat tight. "Thanks, Dad. I won't." As I drove away, I looked back at our house, the porch light glowing in the early morning. I knew there would be more fights, more misunderstandings, more moments when we hurt each other without meaning to. But I also knew we'd find our way back, again and again. Because that's what families do. College felt different this time. I wasn't running away from home, I was stepping into something new, carrying with me the lessons of a summer that had changed me. My dorm room was smaller than I remembered, the walls still covered in faded posters from last year, but I unpacked with a sense of purpose. I sat at my desk, arranged my books, and hung a photo of my parents and me on the bulletin board. It wasn't a perfect picture. Dad's eyes were half closed, Mom's smile a little forced, my own face caught between a laugh and a grimace, but it was real. The first week back, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. I found myself checking my old post, reading new comments that still trickled in. Some people were just finding it for the first time, sharing their own stories, asking for advice. I replied when I could, offering encouragement, sometimes just a listening ear. It felt good to be part of something bigger than myself. Classes started, and the pressure returned, deadlines, group projects, the constant hum of anxiety that came with trying to keep up. But I was different now. When I felt overwhelmed, I called home, not just to vent, but to talk, to listen, to let my parents in. Sometimes the conversations were awkward, full of long silences and half-finished sentences, but we were trying. That was enough. One night, after a particularly rough day, I called Mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, sweetheart. Everything okay?" I hesitated, then let the words spill out. "I'm just tired. Classes are hard. I feel like I'm always behind." She really listened, and when I finished, she said, "I'm proud of you. Not just for your grades, but for being honest. For letting me in." I smiled, tears prickling at my eyes. "Thanks, Ma. That means a lot." After we hung up, I sat on my bed, feeling lighter. I realized that I wasn't alone, not anymore. I had my parents, flawed and human as they were. I had friends, both old and new. And I had a community of strangers who understood what it meant to struggle, to speak up, to hope for something better. A few weeks into the semester, I got an email from a woman named Karen. She was a journalist, working on a story about family dynamics in the age of social media. She'd read my post and wanted to interview me. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to drag my family's pain back into the spotlight. But after thinking it over, I realized that maybe my story could help someone else. Maybe it could start a conversation, make people think before they posted, before they judged. We met at a coffee shop near campus. Karen was kind, her questions gentle but probing. She asked about the post, about my parents, about what I'd learned. "I think the hardest part," I told her, "was realizing that my parents are just people. They make mistakes. They get scared. They want to be loved just like I do." She nodded, scribbling in her notebook. "Do you regret posting it?" I thought about it for a long moment. No. I wish it hadn't hurt them, but I don't regret telling my truth. It brought us closer in a weird way. It made us talk. It made us listen. After the interview, I walked back to my dorm, the autumn air crisp and clean. I felt proud, not just of surviving, but of growing, of changing, of helping others do the same. That night, I got a text from Dad. Just 3 words, "Love you, kiddo." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too, Dad." The world felt a little less heavy. The article came out a few weeks later. It was published online, and Karen sent me the link with a short note. "Thank you for your honesty. I hope this helps others." I hesitated before clicking, my heart pounding in my chest. I was afraid of what people would say, afraid of how my parents would react, afraid of seeing my life dissected by strangers all over again. But when I finally read it, I felt a strange sense of relief. Karen had told the story with compassion, weaving in quotes from other families who had gone through similar things. She didn't paint my parents as villains or me as a victim. She showed us as we were, flawed, hurting, trying. I sent the link to Mom and Dad, my hands shaking. For a while, there was no response. I went to class, tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting back to my phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was soft, almost shy. "I read the article," she said. "Your dad did too." I braced myself. "Are you mad?" She was quiet for a moment. "No. I didn't like seeing our mistakes out there for everyone to read, but I think it's important. I think it might help people." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Thank you, Mom." She laughed, a little shaky. "You know, your aunt called again. She said she wished she'd had the courage to talk to her kids the way we're trying to talk to you." I smiled, picturing my aunt, always so sure of herself, always so quick to judge. Maybe it's not too late. After we hung up, I called Dad. He answered on the first ring, his voice gruff but warm. "You did good, kiddo. I'm still learning, but I'm trying." "I know, Dad. Me too." The article started to spread. People from my high school, old teachers, even distant cousins reached out. Some just wanted to say they were thinking of me. Others shared their own stories, about fights with parents, about feeling misunderstood, about the long, slow work of forgiveness. One message stood out. It was from a girl named Emily, a freshman at a college across the country. She wrote, "I showed your story to my mom. We talked for hours. I think we're going to be okay. Thank you." I replied, "You're welcome. I hope you are." The semester rolled on. I threw myself into my classes, joined a study group, started volunteering at the campus counseling center. I found that helping others made my own problems feel smaller, more manageable. I met people who had been through things I couldn't imagine: loss, addiction, heartbreak, and I realized that everyone was carrying something heavy. One night, after a long shift at the counseling center, I sat on the steps outside my dorm, watching the stars blink into existence. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. "Thinking of you. Hope you're eating enough. Love you." I smiled, typing back, "I am. Love you too." It wasn't perfect. There were still days when I felt overwhelmed, when old wounds ached, when I missed home and resented it at the same time. But there was a new sense of hope, a belief that things could get better, that people could change. I started writing again, not just posts, but stories, essays, little scraps of poetry. I wrote about family, about pain, about healing. I wrote about the night I found my voice, and the days that followed, and the way the world opened up when I finally let myself be seen. And as I wrote, I realized that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt small, or scared, or alone. It belonged to everyone who had ever spoken up or wanted to. It belonged to all of us, trying to find our way home. Autumn deepened, and with it came a new rhythm. I found myself settling into routines that felt both familiar and changed: late-night study sessions, coffee runs with friends, long walks across campus under trees shedding gold and red. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking about home, about the way the kitchen smelled on Sunday mornings or the sound of Dad's laugh echoing down the hallway. The ache was still there, but it was softer now, less like a wound and more like a scar. One weekend, I went home for a visit. I was nervous, unsure of what I'd find. Would things really be different, or had the distance just made it easier to pretend? The drive felt endless, my mind replaying old arguments, old hurts. But when I pulled into the driveway, Mom was waiting on the porch, waving, her face open and hopeful. Inside, the house looked the same faded curtains, same cluttered fridge, same pile of shoes by the door. But the energy was different. Mom hugged me tight, and Dad ruffled my hair, grinning in that awkward, affectionate way of his. We spent the afternoon together, talking and laughing, sharing stories about school and work and the little things that made up our days. There were still moments of tension. Old patterns don't disappear overnight, but we caught ourselves, apologized, tried again. It felt like learning to dance with new steps, sometimes stumbling, sometimes finding the rhythm. That night after dinner, we sat in the living room, the three of us. Mom brought out an old photo album, the kind with sticky pages and faded Polaroids. We flipped through it together, laughing at bad haircuts and awkward family vacations. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. At one point, Mom looked at me, her eyes serious. "I want you to know, I'm proud of you. Not just for school, but for speaking up. For making us see things we didn't want to see." Dad nodded, clearing his throat. "You made us better, even if it hurt." I swallowed hard, emotion thick in my chest. I just wanted us to understand each other. I didn't want to lose you. Mom reached over, squeezing my hand. "You won't. We're family. We fight, we mess up, but we come back together. That's what matters." We sat there for a while, the silence comfortable, the weight between us lighter than it had been in years. The next morning, before I left, Dad handed me a small envelope. "Just something for you," he said, looking embarrassed. In the car, I opened it. Inside was a note, written in his careful, blocky handwriting. "I know I don't always say the right thing. I know I've made mistakes. But I love you, and I'm proud of you. Don't ever doubt that, Dad." I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. I tucked it into my wallet, a reminder that even the hardest conversations could lead to something good. Back at school, I felt lighter, more grounded. I started sharing more of my story, not just online, but in person. I joined a support group on campus, where students talked about family, about boundaries, about learning to forgive. I listened, I shared, I learned. I realized that healing wasn't a straight line, it was messy, full of setbacks and small victories. One night, after a meeting, a girl named Sam pulled me aside. "I read your post," she said quietly. "It helped me talk to my mom. We're not there yet, but we're trying." I smiled, feeling that old aches soften even more. That's all any of us can do. As winter approached, I found myself looking forward, not back. I knew there would be more hard days, more fights, more moments when I felt misunderstood. But I also knew I had the tools to handle them now. I had my voice. I had my boundaries. I had hope. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Spring came early that year, and with it, a sense of quiet resolution. The snow melted, the days grew longer, and I found myself looking at my family and myself with new eyes. The wounds from that summer and fall had faded, leaving behind scars that didn't ache so much anymore. We had all changed in ways big and small. I spent my last weekend at home before returning to campus helping Mom clean out the attic. We sorted through boxes of old clothes, school projects, and forgotten toys. At the bottom of one box, I found a stack of family photos, birthdays, holidays, ordinary afternoons. In every picture, there was a story, some happy, some awkward, some painful. But all of them were real. Mom sat beside me, holding a photo of the three of us at the beach, sunburned and laughing. I wish I could go back and do some things differently, she said quietly. But I'm grateful for where we are now. For the chance to try again. I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle in my chest. Me too. I think we're better for it. Even if it hurt. That night we had dinner together, just the three of us, no distractions, no phones. Dad raised his glass, a rare smile on his face. To second chances, he said, and to not giving up on each other. We clinked glasses, and for the first time, I felt the weight of the past lift. We talked, we laughed, and when the conversation turned serious, we listened. There were still things we didn't agree on, still moments when old habits threatened to creep back in. But now we caught ourselves. We apologized. We forgave. Before I left for school, Mom hugged me tight. I'm proud of you. For speaking up. For helping us see you and ourselves more clearly. Dad handed me another note, this one shorter than the last. You're always welcome here. No matter what. Driving back to campus, I realized that the story I'd shared online had become something much bigger than a single post. It had started a conversation, not just in my family, but in families all over the world. Strangers had become friends, parents had become listeners, and kids like me had found the courage to speak. I learned that boundaries aren't about shutting people out, they're about letting the right things in. I learned that telling the truth can hurt, but it can also heal. And I learned that family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. If you're reading this and you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or unloved, know that your voice matters. Your story matters. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is speak up, even if your voice shakes. Thank you for listening to mine. If this story resonated with you, or if you have your own experience to share, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Your voice could be the one that helps someone else feel less alone.